We gather today in the house of remembrance to mourn the death and celebrate the life of Sharon Zang. We come together here in the shadow of death because the spirit of life demands to be heard. We meet with sorrow in our hearts and with thankfulness also for the good things of life we have shared with her who is gone. Those whose lives she touched are diminished by Sharon's absence. Her dying cuts across the course of our ordinary days, summoning us to pause, to pay tribute, to reach out to other grieving hearts. And so we gather to take account of our common loss, to express our sorrow in the company of those who share it, to seek the comfort of one another's presence, to make a gesture of farewell, and to affirm the value of a life well lived in mutual affection and integrity. We cannot choose but acknowledge that those whom we love do indeed depart from us. And when we lose them, no spoken words shall make less our grief. Yet we would be reminded here that what they were can never leave us. The warmth of her presence remains, the generosity of her character, the truth of her love. These are ours always, fused in our memories and blended in our thoughts. So let this hour be the confession of our friendship and affection, and these rites our testimony to the power of love, which shall be finally stronger than sorrow or parting. Here, let the memory of Sharon Zang become for us a sacred bond to all that she held dear, to the source of life in which she had her being, and to whose everlasting rhythm she is now returned. There we go. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Kendall Gibbons. I'm the senior minister here at All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church, which has been Fred and Sharon's spiritual community and home for many years. This afternoon, we will be sharing in readings, in music, and in memories from some among us, moments from Sharon's life and the meaning that she has had and continues to have for all of those who cared for her. We thank each of you for being here to offer your support to the family, and we invite you to gather for light refreshments and informal conversation in the foyer after this service concludes. The ideals to which we give our devotion and the habits of mind and heart that we practice, such as reason, curiosity, hope, and nurturing care, illuminate the world even when our individual lives reach their inevitable close. Therefore, we kindle once again this flame, symbol of the free faith of this community's heritage and the path that we shared for a time with Sharon. In its light, may we enshrine in memory all that was best in her and carry her influence as a lasting summons to our own better selves. We begin with these words of protest and consolation from the poets. From Edna St. Vincent Millay. I am not resigned to the shutting away of loving hearts in the hard ground. So it is, And so it will be, for so it has been, time out of mind. Into the darkness they go, the wise and the lovely. Crowned with lilies and with laurels they go, but I am not resigned. Lovers and thinkers, into the earth with you. Be one with the dull, the indiscriminate dust, a fragment of what you felt, of what you knew. A formula, a phrase remains, but the best is lost. The answers, quick and keen, the honest look, the laughter, the love, they are gone. They are gone to feed the roses. Elegant and curled is the blossom, fragrant is the blossom, I know. But I do not approve. More precious was the light in your eyes than all the roses in the world. Down, down, down into the darkness of the grave, gently they go, the beautiful, the tender, the kind. Quietly they go, the intelligent, the witty, the brave. I know, but I do not approve, and I am not resigned. The humanist philosopher and poet Kenneth Patton says this: "None but the callous will make little the sorrow of men and women at the death of those they love. There is no sure medicine for this ill, and those who love truly wish for none. We know our sorrow as the necessary price of the joy of love and possession. The heavier our sorrow, the more has been that which is taken away. They who embrace and affirm life willingly invite sorrow as the risk taken in owning the fullness of life and companionship. We learn to possess our sorrows as the measure of our loves. And we will learn in this parting to dwell more constantly with her who is gone, bringing her into ourselves as the companion of our silence and our solitude, even as she was once our outward companion. So time will dull the pain, but even the medicine of time is not sure. The only final healing is to create our peace within ourselves by possessing our sorrows in our solitude, by possessing our memories and finding in them strength." In her adult life, Sharon was not conventionally Christian, but she loved this piece of music as a thing of beauty in its own right. Sharon Ann O'Malley Sparks Zang had a talent for caring. She loved children, art, animals, science, flowers, and Walt Disney. She was a dedicated nurse, teacher, and administrator, and she had a passion for social justice. She was a native Kansas Citian and lived here almost all her life. She made the world better for those around her with her compassionate attention, both finding and giving joy. It might have been otherwise. Sharon's life had its challenging chapters. One was her childhood. Her mother left the family when she was young. Her father was not sympathetic, and as she remembered it, she and her siblings, Michael and Patty, effectively raised each other and remained close as adults. The family was Catholic, and so was Sharon's education, but she was always privately a skeptic and never really accepted this faith. As a child, she found that it separated her from other kids, and later in life, she would recall it as having been judgmental. So she was content to be the outlier in the family. Nursing was one career option that her father would support. And so after graduating from St. Pius X High School in North Kansas City, she went on to Providence Hospital School of Nursing and St. Mary's University in Leavenworth. Sharon's first marriage to George Sparks ended after 17 years, although they remained cordial until his death. The one part of her life away from Kansas City was the 2 years they lived in California until they experienced an earthquake and decided to return to the stable Midwest. She was often the family breadwinner and was glad to be considered practical and responsible. As was usual in those days, she went back to work 3 days after her babies were born. Sharon enjoyed motherhood and loved her sons, Craig and Brian, with unconditional enthusiasm. She intentionally gave them the happy and nurturing childhood that she had not experienced herself. Whatever they did, whether bicycle racing, art school, or electrical engineering, she was proud and supportive of them. She would later expand that circle to include her stepdaughter, Emilia, and 8 grandchildren who loved their many trips to Disneyland with their grandmother. Even after her divorce, Sharon did not give up on the possibility of romance. And in 1989, she took notice of a fellow in her office, Fred Zhang, also recently single. They quickly hit it off and soon were married. Each would later agree that this connection was the best thing that had happened in both of their lives. They had been married for 34 years at the time of her death. Sharon had a soft spot for animals and could never leave a stray or lost dog to suffer. She always had pets in her own life and facilitated many other adoption rescues as well. She enjoyed cooking and orchestrating large family gatherings, making sure that no one would ever leave without a substantial take-home container. She and her sister even catered her own wedding to Fred. In her later years, she would take up watercolor painting with a passion for flowers and painstaking detail. Some of her favorite works are on display here in the lobby this afternoon. It was at a visit to the Unplaza Art Fair on the All Souls grounds that they first learned about Unitarianism, and Butch Murphy later sealed the deal by inviting them over for a visit the first time they attended a service. Sharon may have chosen nursing out of a limited set of options, but she embraced it with a lifelong dedication, both to her patients and to the institutions for which she worked. These included Children's Mercy Hospital, Kansas City General Hospital, Truman Medical Center, and Truman Medical Center East. She worked in the emergency department in the allergy clinic and became a certified geriatric nurse. She was a preceptor and director of nursing at Truman East, as well as the nursing home administrator. When her grandchildren came along, she willingly set aside her career and took early retirement in order to help care for them and to be a significant part of their early years. She continued to enjoy reading scientific books and journals and took up painting. It was not until the confinement of the recent COVID years that she began reading fiction regularly and became an avid fan of mystery novels. Sharon had a tremendous loyalty to the people, the institutions, and the causes that she believed in. She and Fred were faithful supporters of All Souls and particularly enjoyed getting to know other members at the Dinners for Eight. 3 years ago, they downsized from their single-family home and were delighted to discover a new community of friends at the Village Cooperative of Verona Hills. She was also an advocate for social justice, particularly for the elderly and those dealing with physical or mental ability challenges, and of course, animals. She also generously supported the All Souls Hunger Outreach Team. Earlier in the year, Sharon experienced a fall, and it seemed as if she might be developing an issue with balance. Then, at the end of February, she took another spill in the hallway outside their unit and then required brain surgery to relieve pressure in her brain. She never fully recovered consciousness, and by the 7th of March, she was gone. Her children, her grandchildren, and her beloved Fred will miss her enormously, and the world is less bright because her light is extinguished. Sharon had a naturalist outlook on death, believing that we come from the same dust that makes the stars, and that our lives return to that cosmic energy when they are done. Now we must become the hands of care and the voice of compassion, so that her love and work may continue to be felt in the world, and her memory may be a blessing to us always. The one immortality that we can all be certain of is to be remembered in the hearts and minds of those who have loved us. And the healing of our sorrow when someone we cherish has died happens in part through the sharing of the stories and the qualities that live on in our memories. We now invite any of those present who wish to share a thought or a story about Sharon to come to the microphone, either here at the podium or on the floor, for the sake of those participating online, and speak a memory that may be a comfort and inspiration to us all. We'll begin, please, with Tom Edgerton.
Hello, everybody. My name is Tom Edgerton, and 40 years ago, I was the associate administrator for long-term care and ancillary services at Truman Medical Center East. And guess what? Sharon was the director of nursing of long-term care. Believe it or not, Harry Truman established the Home for the Aged in about 1937. And 80 years later, Sharon was the director of nursing of the geriatric concentration for the UMKC School of Medicine. Truman Medical Center East had 224 beds, and the patients who were there were medically indigent. The patients had no families, no friends, were as poor as dirt, but the staff of Truman Medical Center East, particularly the nursing staff, became their family. What is most remarkable about the level of care of these patients is that both the Joint Commission on Hospital Administration and the Missouri Departments of Aging, they all said that the patients at Truman Medical Center East, long-term care, received the best care ever, regardless of their physical or mental limitations. I don't know how many of you visited Truman Medical Center East 40 years ago, but this 224-bed nursing home had no odor, no nursing home or odor. Why? Because the staff, led by Sharon, had a great belief in not using catheters. They had a great belief in the frequent changes of clothing, the turning of patients. So really, there was no odor, very few decubitus ulcers. It was just an ideal living place for the poorest of the poor and the forgotten of Jackson County. Now, Sharon was the director. It was marvel for me as on the administrative staff to watch her and to watch her interplay with her staff. She was assisted by 6 RNs. Are any of her head nurses here today? Dee? Is Karen here? Karen. I've asked them to stand, but they'd probably be embarrassed because these ladies, representing the 6 nurses, took care of all these patients, and regardless of the turnover of the nursing assistants, their pay was at the McDonald's level, so there was a lot of turnover, but the care delivered by Sharon and the head nurses kept the standard high. Now I want to tell you about one patient. Every Christmas, Santa came to visit each and every patient. Each and every patient received gifts gathered by the auxiliary, and they were personalized to the patient. They asked me to play Santa Claus, and so I put on a uniform. And I'd seen about 25 patients until I came across this one patient. She was older, elderly, in a fetal position, paralyzed. I thought, I don't think she will respond to Santa Claus. And I said to the staff, I'm going to put these right by her bedside. And they said, oh no, Santa, get with her, get over beside her and get down to her eye level and talk to her. And I did. And I talked to her just like I did other people. And this great big tear started forming and just rolled down her face. And they said, see, Santa, she knows you were here, and she is so appreciative of you stopping to talk to her. Now, this is intimate knowledge of patients under the most austere circumstances. And I want you to know that all patients, 224 perhaps, the staff knew them equally as well. And it was through this type of care, through Dee and Karen and the other head nurses, that made this real. The reason I'm pointing this out is that we have a lot of trouble with healthcare today. Sharon Sparks, Fred's wife, was a pathfinder in healthcare, particularly for the geriatric level and for those who were down and out. She worked hand in glove, not only with her nursing staff, but all other departments. Now, I'm going to quote somebody. Karen, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to quote Karen Gall, who really described Sharon's strength and abilities better than anybody. It is important for all of us to remember Sharon Zang's strong compassion for true justice and care for the weakest of all humanity. She delivered a powerful voice to make sure all caregivers understood the meaning of true, gentle, empowered relationships, regardless of race, gender, or physical ability. Her strong devotion to this ethical, compassionate standard was also administered to all staff members and delivered in a constant manner. Always strong, always gentle, with a clear voice. Sharon will always be missed. Our job is to carry on the lessons we learned from our true and remarkable friend. So, as I am here mourning the loss of Sharon, I'm also really celebrating her life. This contribution was enormous. I'm going to step out here and show you my socks. I really came here hoping Sharon would be here so she could make a comment about my socks. And right behind me, before I got here, I called in the spirit of Jack Mulligan, Joanne Mills, and who else? Margaret Sturgis. Who else should be up here? They're with me. We're like the family feud. I'm representing all of them, talking to you about Sharon. So Fred, and who are the boys? I've heard about you boys forever. I'm glad I finally saw you. So Fred, family, boys, you have blessed memories. You have a mom and a wife who made significant contributions to things that we are now experiencing in healthcare today. And I'm so pleased that we have another nurse in the audience who has the same qualities, but is from Truman Medical Center, Sharon Kuba. Sharon, thanks for being here. Thanks for that nursing profession. And thank you for letting me speak to you about this wonderful person. Thank you.
People see me and hear me. I'm Dee Payne. When one spends most of their adulthood as a single person, as I have, your friends are your family. Sharon Zang accepted me as a member of her family for 55 years. I first met Sharon in 1967 at Children's Mercy Hospital. She was in the class 2 years behind me in nursing school, but I didn't remember her. One of her classmates told me she was coming to Mercy to work. O'Malley's really pretty, she told me. You should remember her. And pretty she was her entire life. Sharon first worked in the allergy clinic. When the ER was quiet, I would go down to allergy clinic and help give allergy shots. After Craig was born, she worked weekends in the ER. In 1970, I moved to Laredo, Texas to work for Project Hope on the border, and Sharon and her family moved to LA. I returned to Kansas City in the summer of 1971 and went back to work at Mercy. Much to my surprise, I ran into Sharon, also working in the ER. She had moved back to Kansas City, and she was living with her family in a guest cottage at her dad's home on Lake Lotawana. That evening, she invited me to come and visit with her the next weekend. I would spend almost every weekend that summer with her family. I got to know her dad, her stepmom, and siblings. I became an accepted member of the O'Malley clan. Sharon and her then husband, George, bought a home in Johnson County, and I moved to an apartment close to them. I spent 3 months in anesthesia school at the old General Hospital and hated every minute of it, so decided to quit the program. About this time, Sharon called to say she was starting a new job in a clinic at General Hospital and that there was another opening. I did apply, and once again, we were working together. Over a 15-year period, Sharon and I worked together at Children's Mercy, General Hospital, TMC, and TMC East. For a few years, we even rode to work together, to and from work. So we spent about 10 hours a day in one another's company. It's impossible to summarize a 55-year friendship in a few short paragraphs. Sharon has been much of my thoughts these past few weeks since her passing, and she has even invaded my dreams a few times. Perhaps the best way to tell you about what her friendship meant to me is to mention just a few memories that have floated through my consciousness. Just by recalling her good deeds will tell you about her very essence. When I decided to marry for the first time at age 46, Sharon and Fred hosted a sit-down engagement dinner for about 25 close friends and family. The room was beautifully decorated with her personal touch. It was a very special evening for me. A few weeks after this dinner, Dan had a medical emergency that resulted in a hospital admission over Thanksgiving weekend. That evening, Sharon suddenly appeared at the hospital with a dinner of leftovers for me. She also brought me a gift. She had taken many pictures of our engagement dinner. With her artistic touch, she had put together a scrapbook of our celebration. Dan and I were married February the 4th, 1989. Sharon and Fred were there to help us celebrate. Fred became our unofficial photographer. A few months later, Sharon called me at my dentist's office. I was coming to work after the appointment, but she wished to let me know that she and Fred were officially engaged. She wanted to tell others at work, but she wanted to let me know first. She told me how much she valued our friendship and wanted to make sure she didn't hurt my feelings by letting others know before she had told me. My husband Dan and I were not blessed with a long marriage. In May of 1997, he was diagnosed with multiple myeloma. He had a very large plasmacytoma on his femur, which required a very long surgery. Sharon sat with me the entire length of the surgery. She never asked what she could do, she just did it. During his 8-month illness, she came and cleaned my house, took my sick cat to the vet. She was always available to listen when I needed to talk. After Dan died, I moved to Wisconsin for about 6 years, so my brother and I could share the care of our mother. I would drive home to Kansas City every year and would always stay with Sharon and Fred. When I decided to return to KC, Sharon found an apartment for me near them. She made the deposit for me until I could reimburse her. They helped me get settled in my new place. My brother put Mom on a plane in Milwaukee, and Sharon and I were there at the airport in KC to meet her. We then took her to TMC so she could be admitted to the long-term care where we had both worked. I have many female friends through the years, and I tend to keep them for a long time. I haven't always agreed with them, and sometimes they have hurt my feelings more than once. I can, however, say that Sharon and I never spoke a disagreeable word to one another in those 55 years. Sharon once asked this question when we were out walking: "Do you think grass feels pain when you step on it?" This sums up her great capacity for empathy for all living things, plant, animal, and human. I went to see Sharon the Sunday before she left us the next Monday. There were no other visitors at the time, so I was grateful for the alone time. I sat with her for about an hour. I touched her, held her hand, and told her I loved her. I told her what our friendship had meant to me all these years. I told her that she was always the first person I called with good news and the first person I called with bad news.
Or I'll move that up. My name is Kathy O'Malley Norquist. So Sharon and I were cousins. We first met in 1952. I was 7, she was 9, Patty was 8. We were a little bit of a part of Sharon's tumultuous childhood. It happened when Grandma Min died because, as we were told, Charles was raising his children alone, and our paternal grandmother, Min, was helping. And when she passed away, my family came down, my father, Charles's brother, and my mother, and my brother and I, to help with the family. So we spent about 3 years together, from 52 to 55. And during those years, and were some tumultuous times. It was a crazy time. We had ringworm at that time. I don't know if you know, but in the 50s, they shaved our heads, and we had these little hats that we wore. We couldn't go to school. Sharon and Patty went to the Catholic school, and I went to a nearby elementary, although we weren't there all the time. But we spent those years together. And then my father moved my mother and us to Mission, Kansas, and then he left my mother. So we went back to Minnesota, where I was raised. So about 10 years ago, my brother was doing Ancestry, and he contacted Mike O'Malley, who said, "We're cousins." And by the time we got together more, Mike had passed. But Sharon wanted to talk to me. And so about 10 years ago, we met. We met as adults, Sharon and Patty and Bill and Fred and Jean and I and my brother Bill. And Sharon was so wonderful as we got together and went back to those places that we had been all those almost 60 years ago. And Patty had the line, it's like trying to come back and reflect the memories of children who are 7, 8, 9-year-olds out of 50 years. And that's what we tried to do. And so we kept in touch. And Sharon was so special to me. I had breast cancer in in 2018. Sharon and Fred came up to take care of me, the nurse that she was. She came, took care of me, did the dishes in my house, went to the doctor with me, and we tried to get in touch all the times that we could. So the first time I saw her was in 1952. The last time I saw her was the weekend that she died, or the weekend that she fell. Jean and I came, we were going south, we had dinner with Sharon and Fred. And we talked about the past, and again, Sharon said, my father never liked your father, and I thought, we're going to have to get back to that, but we never did. Walking back, she fell in the hall, and they went to the hospital, and I saw her in the hospital the next day, and she was like, they didn't know what was happening, and Jean and I went south, and so Fred kept me in touch. So Fred, thank you for your care for my dear cousin Sharon. You were so wonderful to her, and it's been an honor for me to get to know her again as a cousin, as a friend, and you as a friend as well. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to share? That's fine.
first met Fred and Sharon here at All Souls. My partner Julie and I had recently joined, and we were looking to expand our community of friends. And Fred and Sharon were also looking to expand their community of friends. And so we both joined Dinner for Eight. And as fate would have it, they came to our house for our first Dinner for Eight. And we had a fabulous time. It was a congenial group. We had good conversation. Of course, the food was great. And we had, a lot of sharing. Well, that led to them, Fred and Sharon, inviting Julie and I to their house, when they still lived in their house, to watch a Chiefs game, a playoff game. And we had such a wonderful time. There were a couple of gay men there, and they could have cared less about the game. But Sharon and the rest of us were avid fans, and so we all just mixed in and just had a wonderful time of food and drinks and sharing conversation. There were two things about that meeting at their house that stood out to me. One was what a incredibly fierce fan she was. She would be screaming at the television, "Go, go, go," or get him, or whatever. She was fierce. I couldn't believe. And the other thing, I knew that she was an artist. I had no idea. She was so modest about her art. It was absolutely incredible. She had a talent that I really had never seen in art like that before. So that dinner led to other dinners at their their new place, their condominium, or and all of the meetings. We had several times where we got together with them and friends at the place, and it was always good food, sharing, conversation, talking about all kinds of things. We always had a wonderful time with them. I just want to say that we're going to miss our friend Sharon. She had setbacks, but she always met those setbacks with the kind of determination that I really admired. So I'm going to miss that about her fierceness, her loyalty, and the way she smiled at you, Fred. I'm going to miss that.
Hello, my name is Emilia Zhang, and Sharon was my stepmom. I've known her since I was 6 years old. After she married my dad, she joined the family without skipping a beat. She was a wonderful stepmom, and she always provided me with unconditional love and support. She was caring and kind. She helped me grow into the adult I am today. I feel lucky to have two moms in my life. I will hold Sharon close to my heart as I go through life. Sharon played a crucial role in my upbringing. She helped me cope with the struggles of daily life. As you may know, I am on the high-functioning end of the autism spectrum, and she was able to deal with some of the behaviors associated with my disability. She was a kind and generous person, and she was very patient with me. Sharon and I also had some things in common. We both had an interest in medicine. Sharon, as you know, was a nurse for many years, and so we enjoyed having conversations together about different illnesses and their treatments. She always amazed me with the depth of her knowledge about medicine. Another interest we shared was our political views. We never tired of discussing politics, and we enjoyed going to some political rallies and hearing our voices heard. I'd like to close by saying that while she won't be with us on earth, she'll always be in our hearts. She never gave up on me. I will remember her always. Finally, I want to thank you all for being here and for all your thoughts and prayers and for supporting my dad during this difficult time.
Paul, would you give us some last words?
I'm Paul Zhang, and I'm one of Fred's younger brothers. And I have to say that I have really, really enjoyed all these stories and learning things about Sharon I had never known. Emilia, you moved me to tears, so I'm recovering from that. It was really wonderful. So, my son Eric and my daughter Anna were not able to attend. They're in Michigan. But we have had many discussions and reminiscence about Fred and Sharon and the experiences that we had. And my son has some rich memories that I asked him to share with us today as her nephew. And he wrote this: "While wishing that I could be there with you right now, I extend my deepest sympathies to Uncle Fred, Emilia, Craig, Brian, and their respective families, as anyone, and as well as to anyone whose world is a bit smaller today in the absence of my Aunt Sharon. As I have grown older and after having gone through the loss of my own mother fairly recently, I am reminded how important it is to make and cherish as many family memories as possible. Because frankly, life on earth is incredibly short and often comes with unexpected detours. And once our loved ones are no longer with us, it's those memories that we created together that provide the comfort and solace we hunger for, not only in times of grief and loneliness, but when their memory provides a smile and a laugh that carries us through our day. Geography and my mother's disability were the primary barriers to regular opportunities to gather with Uncle Fred and Aunt Sharon. In spite of those obstacles, we gathered as often as we could. Every memory and experience I had with Sharon, I remember with fondness. I'll take a moment to reflect on two that are most vivid and have had a lasting impact. First, many years ago, too many to remember, I experienced my childhood dream of becoming a grown-up overnight. I was maybe 10 years old or so, and Fred and Sharon were in their early years of their marriage, and there was a hospital social work directors conference coming up that was to take place in St. Louis, Missouri. Both my dad and Uncle Fred, being hospital social work directors, were looking forward to attending the same conference and spending time together. Then Sharon got the idea, how fun would it be if Eric were to come along, get to see all of St. Louis, and then, after the conference, come back and spend another week in Kansas City? And how about hanging out with my Aunt Sharon and Uncle, as well as my much older, much cooler cousins, Craig and Brian? Well, this service isn't long enough to share every detail of that life-changing trip, but seared into my brain is the memory of Sharon rounding up Craig and Brian to take us all to an awesome go-kart track. Now, this wasn't just your run-of-the-mill amusement park go-kart setup, but rather it was the real deal, super fast, big boy track. It's where the real enthusiasts of the need for speed go to play. Well, not only was it the coolest thing that I had ever done up to that time, but likely would have never have happened had my mom seen my lead foot on that gas pedal. Also on that trip, Aunt Sharon took me to the top of the St. Louis Arch. We got to go to the St. Louis Zoo, and eventually I flew back home all by myself. It all made me feel quite mature and very loved. I remember wanting to know right away when our next trip to see Uncle Fred and Aunt Sharon would be scheduled. Many years later, after Grandpa Zhang had passed, Uncle Fred and Aunt Sharon graciously moved Grandma Zhang out to Missouri, where she could no longer when she could no longer live on her own in Michigan. Grandma seemed to acclimate very quickly to her new surroundings, mostly because of Fred and Sharon's incredibly frequent trips to the assisted living home where she lived. The whole family knew that Grandma's time was growing short and that every visit and opportunity to gather was important and priceless. Being in Michigan, we knew we needed to make our way out there and see and visit with Grandma. However, Mom's handicap made it virtually impossible to fly, so for Thanksgiving weekend, we loaded Mom in the van and drove all the way to Kansas City, and when we arrived, the house had already been outfitted with a ramp to make Uncle Fred and Aunt Sharon's house accessible to Mom. I just remember how incredibly hospitable Aunt Sharon was to our whole family during that trip. We were pretty certain it would be the last time we would see my grandmother alive, and I just remember how present and cognizant Sharon was in wanting us to have the best and most memorable trip we could under those circumstances. I would have loved to have more opportunity to spend time with Aunt Sharon. However, every single memory and interaction I had with her, I remember with fondness. I pray that she is at peace and that every time she is spoken of, she will be remembered as the beautiful person that she was. And that's from my son, Eric. Thank you.
The horizon of death is a great mystery on the landscape of human experience. We cannot know with certainty what lies beyond, but we can imagine the rest to be found in that sunset land with all labor and pain left far behind. And we can believe in the very fiber of our beings that the great promises of life still ring true. The immortality of beauty and virtue, the power of genuine thought and honest friendship and love. Whatever remains of Sharon's spirit is at peace and beyond all harm. As she was good, that goodness will be her guardian always. As she was loved, that love will attend her forevermore. It is not our way to withhold from the earth forever the substance of which our living bodies were once composed, and thus unto the fire which reclaims in purity the simple elements of matter that constitute organic human existence, we have entrusted the mortal remnant of our beloved wife, mother, sister, and friend, earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. In a few moments following the conclusion of this event, her family will privately release Sharon's ashes to the earth of the Simpson House garden. And so there shall be performed for her the final duty of love, which is to lay aside with tenderness and reverence the broken vessel from which the essence of her being is fled, trusting that what was best in her is not lost, but radiates outward to join the moving sea of creation once more in its many seasons. since it is left to us to continue in the world. May the death of this honored woman recall us to our own destiny, strengthening us in our dedication to some noble purpose and in our loyalty to those who remain with us. If so much that is precious can be so easily lost, let us more dearly cherish all that remains. And the love we can no longer give to this beloved one, may we give to those who have need of it now. The words of the poet Elder Olson: "Nothing is lost. Be still. The universe is honest. Time, like the sea, gives all back in the end, but only in its own way, on its own conditions. Empires as grains of sand, forests as coal, mountains as pebbles. Be still, I say. You were never the water, only a wave, not substance, but a form that substance assumed. May we have faith to believe that the universe is honest, even beyond the limit of our sight, that beauty changes and abides, that goodness persists in ever new forms, that love outlasts time and death and all the stars. And therefore, let us go from here in peace of heart and compassion for one another, in quietness and confidence, to take up the duties of our waiting lives. Live in love, die in love. It's that simple and that difficult, always.